switch to the. All right.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and record it. We can always edit it later, but may as well get it online. All right.
Yep, I appreciate it. Okay, welcome everyone. Okay, today is going to be a rather short session. We had limited the sessions to 1 hour originally, but seeing what we have to cover has been so broad that yesterday's session took several hours to cover the issues. And today we're going to be covering what the United Nations did yesterday with participation of the Congressional Black Caucus, along with our submission to the African Union in the creation of a African diaspora financial network solution that we had proposed to the working group of experts on people of African descent in the United Nations Human Rights Council on December 3rd, 2020. And I will be giving starting out with a background briefing on our plans and actions with the US government around the Black Folks Plan and its partner plans of action that uses the United States authority to issue new Federal Reserve debt. It's called quantitative easing. And so we're going to wait for about 7:05 for people to get in. But meanwhile, if anybody online has some questions, I'll give some answers if I'm able to do so.
Herschel, this is Queen Mother Wakila. We're pretty much in a position right now to send out information regarding next week at Nicodemus. Do we have a final on the date of the charter? The charter
Friday.
key for Friday.
Friday.
What time? Mm-hmm.
They want it 11 o'clock a.m.
Okay, good deal. That's what we needed to know because our elders and other organizations intend to bring a bus load up, so we needed to know that. Okay.
Yep. We're going to start in the morning. Now understand for FAU we're doing two major events in Kansas next week. Okay. One is on Wednesday, July 28th. That we're standing up operations in Kansas on a virtual mode. And we're starting in the morning around the National Buffalo Soldiers Day. And in that, we're looking to create with a partner organization in Kansas chapters of the National Association of Black Veterans. And so that's one thing that we're doing on that day. The second thing that we're doing on that day is around the 14th Amendment. That's that day in 1868 that our ancestors became American citizens. And so we're doing those two things online in a virtual. And we're having our conference call that day on this line at this time that's going to commemorate and wrap up for that day, those events. But we're going to have a rolling events and actual physical events all during that day from the Colonel Young Center in Wilberforce in Ohio, from when he escaped as a slave child across to Ohio, to when in California as Colonel Young, the highest ranking Black in the United States military, that he was in charge of the national forest there in the Department of Interior. That although the Department of Interior started before the Civil War, it didn't get going in the National Park Services, and he was among the Army units that were the first park rangers.
Okay.
And so we had a meeting today with the National Park Service, and we'll be giving more information on that tomorrow, on tomorrow's meeting, talking about that as part of what we're doing internationally to take care of environmental as part of the Black Folks Plan.
Okay. All righty.
And then on Friday in Kansas, when all of the people who are going to be physically present, the World Conference of Mayors and the Historic Black Towns and Settlements Alliance is physically going to sign the charter papers. And for those who can't make it, we're going to host a Zoom for them. But then also the same thing holds true for Friends of the African Union. And the way that we're structured with the African Diaspora Directorate, if we have 2 or more Friends of the African Union coalitions in a state, then we create a statewide, it's like the NAACP, where the NAACP has a statewide assembly made up of 2 or more NAACP chapters. The difference is that the African Diaspora Directorate has already been tasked to be the agent for people of African descent in negotiations with the US government around the Universal Periodic Review of Human Rights in the United States with a solution, not a complaint. So we're not the organization that goes and complains about the situation of Black folk in the United States, but rather we're the organization that on November 9th submitted to the US State Department the framework for creating a public-private partnership as a solution. And then on November 12th, they wrote back and said, okay, your unsolicited proposal needs to be responsive on this format. And so now in the Biden administration, where the Biden administration now has laid out in these past 6 months, it has laid out how it looks at racial reconciliation, and especially how it's laid it out with executive order on day one, executive order 13985. And that executive order said that 200 days from the issue of that executive order, that there should be plans in each department and independent agency of the federal government that address people of African descent, Native Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian American, Oceanic Americans, as well as specialized groups, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, people with disabilities, as well as communities that have been economically disenfranchised or religiously persecuted. And so that executive order has not gained a lot of attention, but it is a whole of government effort from the beginning of the Biden administration. So we took that dog out to walk with the Department of Agriculture and use that as a first go-to. And now the Department of Commerce and the Veterans Administration. And so we're going to be rolling it out through August 25th with each department of the government on our plans and actions with each department of the government based on the interagency task force that was established in the State Department to respond to the review of the world of the human rights conditions in the United States, with a specialized focus on people with disabilities, a specialized focus on women and girls, a specialized focus on compliance with the Sustainable Development Goals, a specialized focus on Native Americans, and our original start around Black folk. And we bring all that local to Kansas through the Friends of the African Union local coalitions, where the local coalitions then make a decision on what they will specialize in, if anything. In the case of Wichita, the specialization is in aerospace because of what you have, your knowledge base, your infrastructure in aerospace, what is in Wichita, and relationships. Was that more of an answer than you wanted?
Yeah, that's fine. Can Wichita add other components to that? Because
Sure.
yeah. The
You're the National Council of Elders headquarters also.
Oh, the international. Do we have one of those? Are you talking about the national?
I'm talking about, okay, the international push is in that permanent form on people of African descent in the United Nations. Okay. So what we would be doing is to use the model for the whole idea of the national for all 300 million of us who are in the African diaspora. Okay, and so the whole idea of the international is based off of the United Nations, because that's the only combination that we have. We're all 1.6 billion people of African descent come together right now.
Okay.
Whereas the African Union, by its organizational structure as nations or member organizational in terms of the 55 members, okay, only cover the continent. They have mechanisms for those of us who are in the 300 million as a people African descent in the global African diaspora, and they have mechanisms for us as American nationals that over the next year that we're going to be exploring and setting in people's minds. But okay, what we have right now is this unique opportunity through September 13th that 106 nations voted for creating the permanent form in the United Nations for all 1.6 billion of us to organize around. And then from Wichita, based on the model of the National Council of Elders, working with others, okay, we would look to input that in the United Nations as part of the permanent form.
Okay.
You see the difference?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, there's the getting it done here domestically. Okay. And so that roundup is something like on the, if we use the Black Family Reunion of August 25th, because that's the 400-year commemoration, which is the law that is been put in place back to 1619, August 25th, which is the first official date that the first 20 Africans in the English colonies, that is not us as Africans in the in North America, because we were back in the 1400s, okay, the late 1400s. But the English colonies, which are the ones that came to rule all other European colonists and go on to become the United States. And it's American law. And so we can use that to leverage that 400-year history from August 25th, 1619 to August 25th, 2019, in meeting the challenge that is in the political sphere that challenges our place and the value of the work of our ancestors in the creation of the world's #1 economic power. And so to do that, what FAU has done is use that 400 years as the lodestone and the basis for creating an initiative to create an economic model of the United States from 1619, which these lands then at 1619 were owned by Native Americans. And Kansas was owned by Native Americans. And so it can go at the federal level, or it can go at the state level. And when it goes at the state level, it says in Kansas, 400 years ago, who owned all the land that is Kansas? And then it goes forward, what happened to that ownership? And it builds an economic model of Kansas that's inclusive of the historic Black towns and settlements that were made in Kansas. And it gives an economic rise and an economic fall through 2019, but it sets the stage for us to talk about from 2021 to 2095, what is the plan for the rise of people of African descent in partnership with Native Americans and people of color, and partnership from a plan of action that is derived from Black women and girls, that's with Native American women and girls, that's with people of color, and in the Indigenous Peoples Alliance in the United Nations. So that brings in the whole aspect of women in Kansas. What is the future? Who's willing to align with the aspects of Black folk, Native American, and people of color? And at the same time, the cross-cutting for people with disabilities. And then last but not least, how does the sustainable development goals made local in Kansas, who can be supportive of that through our partnership with UNESCO?
Okay.
So you have those options to either implement them on the models that are developed, or help implement the models to be developed.
Okay.
So what I will be giving to you on Monday for passing around is the documentation for Friends of the African Union in Kansas, along with the African Diaspora Directorate.
Okay. All right.
Now for the Council of Elders, that I will give to you tomorrow. Like I said, I've been laid up because of the surgery on Wednesday, and husbanding my strength as it may be, and resting. I'm listening to the doctors, so I don't end up back in the hospital again. So it will be to you your 7 points that I said earlier in the week that I would get to you.
Okay.
Well, I want to welcome everybody to the call. We're having these at every day from 7 to 8. And then now this is on a webinar-based infrastructural push, but that we have open calls at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the different Zoom. Okay, and Carolyn Kennedy, she's here, the executive director, and so she will, the African Diaspora Directorate, I'm going to ask her to put in the chat the 8 o'clock calls. Okay, and we may tell people during this period. Now these are a set of special calls that will last through August 28th at 7 o'clock. The first of these series around the UNESCO, which the UNESCO, through the UNESCO Center of Peace, is currently holding an 8-day summer camp from children around the world. And that summer camp being held in Maryland wraps up on Monday. And Monday is the day that we also release from us the work that we did in the United Nations with New Future Foundation and Cash Community Development. Now that work was based on the work that we've been doing since 2016 for people of African descent in partnership with Native Americans. And that work was ultimately came at this event on the 29th, which created the Indigenous Peoples Alliance framework. And so we're going to report to the United Nations Indigenous Peoples Forum formally our document on Monday. And so tomorrow we'll be going through that document, but that document serves as our basis for our alliance with the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization through the Center for Peace, which was founded in Frederick, Maryland. Okay, and so its whole idea of domestic nonprofit civil society organizational relationships works for us, it works for them. And so I was part of the opening of their virtual summer camp with students from around the world. And so we have entered into an agreement with them, Mr. Dojokin, who's the executive director of the Washington, D.C. UNESCO Center for Peace, but he's also the chairman of the U.S. National Commission for UNESCO Clubs, Centers, and Associations, as well as the permanent representative of the World Federation of UNESCO's Clubs, Centers, and Associations to ECOSOC. So he was appointed on March 30th this year as the principal coordinator for our international event to kick off on March 21st, the International Day for the Eradication of All Forms of Racism in 2022 through March 27th, 2022. And originally, he was planning for it to be in Colombia, but because of instability that is possible and ongoing, he has rededicated it to the United States. And we recently were on a call with the mayor's council in Philadelphia. And we're looking for Philadelphia to host this important event in 2022. But we're focused, domestically this year around the implementation of the plan of action to decision makers to bring them together on August 25th, 2021. And that conference that we're going to hold at that day principally has in that period, principally has 5 points. 1, create a financial plan of action to be submitted in regards to the International Decade for People of African Descent. So yesterday was the midterm review of the International Decade for People of African Descent. And everyone on this call, when you signed in with your email, we're going to be sending you those links so that you can review what was done in the UN General Assembly, which proclaimed this International Decade for People of African Descent from 2015 to 2024. And so the whole idea of when they cited the strengthening national, regional, and international cooperation in relationship to the full enjoyment of economic, social, cultural, and civil and political rights by people of African descent, and their full and equal participation in all aspects of society. So the plan that we're submitting will be in line with the General Assembly, whose theme for the International Decade is people of African descent, recognition, justice, and development. So domestically, the recognition is that 400 years, okay, to recognize our place in building the world's superpower, the United States of America. And so it becomes a fundable history project in Kansas and each state in doing that 400-year history, because the way we do that history is from an economic standpoint, not a narrative standpoint or not a theoretical standpoint, but at a CPA economist standpoint. And then that's inclusive of, and it has to start with Native Americans, because at 1619, this was their lands. But it is inclusive of all of the immigration that happened from Europeans, the importation of our ancestors as slaves, the further ongoing European immigration. And so in building that model, that's the recognition. Justice is a prime theme of this administration. And it's, as the president has said just recently here in my hometown of Cincinnati this Wednesday, it's not about a Democratic or Republican, it's about an American and America's ideal of justice were beautiful and wonderful, but they weren't enforced for many of us who were not white male landowners. Now in 2021, the United States has set out under the Biden administration to implement that justice. And the development is that today, in 2021, today, right now, there's $210 billion worth of bank-based community benefit agreements with Federal Reserve banks that have been signed since 2016. What has not happened is the development of leadership that recognizes our historic past and uses our probable future based on the justice that we use in the Universal Periodic Review. the Universal Periodic Review of Nations by the United Nations, the ex-Secretary General of the United Nations said it could turn out to be the most powerful tool for the people of the world. And so it's our idea to develop that tool in the United States. And so we have done so since 2014. And then number two, the setup of peoples of African descent and allied civil society in support of the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. I've talked about that just a few minutes ago. And then number three, the creation of bilateral relations between the government of the United States of America and the organs of the African Union. And for your information, the proposed Indigenous Peoples Alliance Co-op is to work with FAU, Cash Community Development, and other partners, public and private, in creating state-based infrastructure so that by August 25th, 2021, around the whole idea of the 400-year African American Commemoration Act, and that participation in creating a Black Family Reunion Festival in 2022. And so those are state-based infrastructural programs that we are looking to put in place. And that's a link that I'll put in the chat for the National Park Service, which also holds the African American History Commission. And point number four is finishing in 2021, developing our universal periodic review-based framework that will advance social justice and inclusion policies for not only people of African descent, but Native Americans, people with disabilities, girls and women, as well as make it inclusive to address the sustainable development goals in an infrastructure funding program for that supports domestic operation, but also provides 10% of its funding for international cooperation. And it's a program that at its core using a process that I've developed that's meant to eradicate racism and intolerance, promote human rights, assist in creating better, more prosperous communities through the African diaspora financial framework, and erasing the digital divide in at least 1.6 billion people of African descent using American technology. And last but not least, in 2022, celebrate the important contributions of Africans and people of African descent worldwide as a supporter through the United Nations, through UNESCO, and as a civil society participant in UNESCO clubs, centers, and associations. All right, I'll stop there and take any questions. And this is all, yes, this is still Eastern Standard Time. Okay. All right. Let's see, is any questions from anyone? If not, your time is valuable and I don't want to hold it.
I thought we were gonna stay on for the 8 like we did last night.
I can let you host here, or you can go to the regular line. At this point, I'm going to go. If there's no questions, I'm going to sleep.
Well, you have
All
to
right.
do what your body tells you need to do.
And who knew that I needed so much sleep? But
Wow.
yeah,
Herschel,
yes.
hi, John Moss, everybody. I just want to quickly share this photo. This is,
some info.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so the gentleman on the far left is the delegate that I met at the gathering in Tulsa. He is the Australian Senior Trade Investment Consulate for Australia, and he's out of Houston. So he's who is wanting to do more with us because there's so many similar challenges that he's facing as for his people in Australia and the Aborigines. The gentleman in the center is Bailey Walker, who's the president of the Chamber of Commerce for all of Oklahoma. And it was
For Native American commerce, right?
Yes, for Native Americans, yes. And this is where Benson gave me a coin that has the U.S. Flag symbol and the Australian, and that's called mateship. So his background's banking and finance and housing, and he's very excited about everything that we're working towards, and made introductions to us for Canada and other nations, as well as I mentioned this morning on the mayor's call, met with Brigadier General in Oklahoma, as I mentioned to Ms. Wakila as well, for aerial aviation. He's the commissioner, retired commissioner, but consultant and all of that as well. And they're interested in seeing how they can help support all of our efforts, as well as there's health and there's other things. So it's very good meetings. I just wanted everyone to briefly get an idea of what I've been up to. Thank you.
So let me say that Australia actually has his people in Australia actually put together with the Australian government an agreement with the African Union. So there's an actual agreement between the African Union and Australia in which his people, as a people of African descent, acknowledged people of African descent through the Citizens and Diaspora Organization Directorate, has a formal relationship with the nations of the African Union. When I talk about what I'm looking for us to do here in the United States, it's literally following a model that has already been proven and put together with Australia.
That's great. He did mention there are some agreements, and I didn't know them, so I didn't want to say anything. But I said,
Yeah.
but definitely meeting with you, Herschel. And
Yeah,
I just wanted to say, lastly, real quick, it's interesting. They refer to the tribes over there, like Canada calls themselves First Nations. You know, over there they call them mobs. Kind of a different lingo, but
yeah,
so
well,
they're
you have
like
to
our mobs
understand that
over here.
Australia was created by the colonial England, and it was a prison colony.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
No, I get
All
it.
right.
Yeah.
And so the Europeans came and took the lands like they took the lands here. Okay. And so it took, like here, hundreds of years for them as a people to be recognized. And like here, They were decimated by European colonization, but they are now in 2021, okay, functioning like here as a people within the Australian government. And so in the creation of the 1.6 billion people in the United Nations is where we all meet up. But again, based on the history, the English history, based off of World War II and the 75-year history of us in Australia, they're one of the Five Eyes, okay, of the United States, okay. Plus, now in the new reorientation of American policy in Asia, they are one of the central focuses of our switch in to meet the Chinese expansion in the world. So, you know, there's a lot that we can do in terms of business between us as a people, okay, and between us as nations. But that's on an individual basis and as a people basis. I look forward for those who want to become involved with us. We will to do so. Thanks, John. And John has been a partner of FAU for since Andrew made the introductions near our beginning. Okay, and Andrew Williams was our central partner in Los Angeles, who made an introduction that who thought it would take till 2021 for our implementation. But we do have that history together from Mayor Garcetta, okay, when John introduced FAU to him to today in Oklahoma, where we're setting a groundbreaking relationship with the events that are going on based off of this past week. All right, questions? All right, so what I want you to do is, if you have any questions, is to send them to our email, and I'm putting it in the chat right now. And we will get back to you within a 48-hour period, or I definitely will read them on the next day for the call. Okay. And so if there's no other questions, then I'm going to close out the chat and close out the call and ask Queen Mother, would you give us some words as we go about the rest of our, oh, wait a minute. I see Mary's here. Mary, do you have any words that you want to give us on an update on the work on Africa?
No, I just attended today because yesterday I couldn't be able to make it. So yeah, I just wanted to get into, are we in tomorrow also, or have we changed from 8? It's kind of.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, sorry. That's the great grand chick. I'm on the phone call. Okay. All right. Yeah, okay, you and your mom are here. Thank you. I'm on the call. All right. Sorry about that, but she is the princess and she knows it. Okay. No, we are still doing the African Diaspora Directorate calls at 8, but we created this special series at 7 o'clock to drive the agenda with the permanent forum and UNESCO.
Okay.
All right. And we're still, we were trying to end these. That's why they were scheduled from 7 to 8. It's just, it held over. There was questions to be answered yesterday.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, all right. So I appreciate you coming on. But the normal schedule at the 8 o'clock calls on Friday, talking about human rights, public safety, et cetera. There was a big move in the United Nations for people of African descent yesterday in the midterm report.
Okay.
All right. It was hosted by the Congressional Black Caucus. And so I normally would have looked to give you all a report on that tonight, but that's not going to happen. Okay, I'm actually going to listen to my doctors and go back and get some rest. Okay. So it's going to be a cram filled on that tomorrow. Normally, you know, we would be doing the international tomorrow, and so it's going to be we're going to start at 7. And Ms. Executive Director, should we just for a period tell everybody to come to this line on for the 8 o'clock call? Why don't we do that?
I think that would make sense.
I agree. I think that would make more sense too.
As a matter of fact, I told them that I sent an email to everybody, asked them to come to this line, and that we will stay for the 8 o'clock to this line.
Oh, okay. Well, you are co-host here. Okay. All right. And so I'll stay on for just in case it had some problems, but you're co-host here. Okay.
You told me we were going to go to the old system.
And
It makes sense to stay on, you know, rather than going off and then go back on.
well, we are staying on. Okay.
Chairman Kennedy, will you also be saving the chat like you do on the other meetings? That would be helpful.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I saved the one from yesterday too.
Oh, good. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
So
This Queen Mother Wakila. Can we get a copy of that link from yesterday? I wanted to edit it down and send it over to my people in Ghana, because that was a very interesting but important conversation we ended up having. But I didn't get a copy of that link, and I did put my email in the chat.
Okay, well, I will look for your email and send you a copy of it.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, I'm going to go off of this call and get on with preparing for this event next week with Associate Elder Kenya Cox. So we can get organized and find out who wants to go up and what kind of transportation we're going to need to put together. All righty. So you guys
that's
on.
good.
All right.
Matter of fact, she just now joined
Okay.
the conversation.
Oh. So Associate Elder, can you call me when you get through with this call? I'm going off so that and when you have a chance, get with me and AHIABGA so that we can, because I talked to Levanta today, and she told me what happened in the meeting, and there's people that are very interested. And so we need to put that message out there, as well as try to coordinate transportation now. All right.
And Queen Mother?
Uh-huh.
John Moss. Hi. So just so you know, on the mayor's call today, they were asking more details, and there were some conversations. So I can't remember the gentleman's name. Robert pointed out it starts
Robert
at 11.
Alexander.
Robert Alexander, and also Tanya. So you might want to follow up with Tanya if there's any questions regarding the agenda, or Robert, just FYI.
So they're
But
prepared,
that is for Nicodemus. But
right?
questions regarding Kansas came up, so I'm just letting you know.
Okay.
Thanks.
So I do not have that link. And so can you send me can you chat me Tanya's phone
Yeah, I
number?
will. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
And
Herschel.
both ACOX and myself was on the meeting this morning.
Okay.
Well, was that the mayor's meeting? The
Yes.
Yeah. So Friday's meeting is it's hosted by the Historic Black Towns and Settlements Alliance, but it is both hosted by the Alliance, but
Okay.
it includes the World Conference of Mayors.
Okay, I thought that it was the veterans conversation this morning. I didn't know.
No.
But the other,
No.
so I'm hey, John, so if
Yes.
Associate Elder was on there, I don't need to do anything. I'm sure they took care of business for me.
That's fine. I just wanted you to be aware questions came up, and Ms. Kenya Cox can fill you in. That's all. I just wanted you to be aware. That's all.
Okay, good deal.
So
All right.
why don't we, seeing I wasn't on the call, Ms. Cox, could you tell us what was decided on the call?
So what they decided is that we will still have a virtual meeting on Wednesday. And on Wednesday, we're going to basically give anybody that is interested in Kansas and maybe even some folks from Missouri that would be interested in establishing a historical town settlement alliance chapter. Just a little bit more about the work that you all are doing and the importance and significance of being a part of it, and then maybe even giving a little bit more of the bones of what it's the structure, and so that we'll have all of that stuff out of the way. And the way that I understand it, then on Friday at 11 in Nicodemus, no, I think we moved it to 12 at 12 in Nicodemus. Then Mayor Ford will then go ahead and swear in those folks. And I mean, that's the way I understand it.
Okay.
And so what were the questions that they had, Kenya?
Who?
John was saying that they had some questions. And so you guys could answer that, okay?
That was regarding more of the timelines. The 11 o'clock came up,
Oh, okay.
12
okay.
o'clock, and then 6 p.m. And I thought they said 11, but I'm not positive. They said they'd email the information out. So
Yeah.
This is Danielle Cox. It's my understanding, because there's a funeral at that the mayor has to attend, that the best time was 12 or after, and they settled as high noon, even though it may be something like 12:15. But that was my understanding.
You know, I changed it.
yes, I believe that's correct, but I'm not positive. That's all I'm saying.
You don't have.
Okay.
FYI.
So the short of it is, people, is that, okay, Tanya Du Bois will mail out to all participants.
Yeah,
All right.
and I had email open.
All right.
Okay.
Tanya Du Bois will mail out to all participants who are on the call the information.
Okay, good. All right.
All right.
I guess you can start working on sending that message out. Let me know what you guys come up with as a messaging, and I'll flood our Council of Elders. But I think that we need to know really soon the numbers. And the way Levanta was talking, there were quite a few people at the NAACP meeting or something that said that they would do buses and all this stuff. So we need to know exactly how that's going to go so we can send it out to our elders as soon as post-Blade. Okay, I'm out.
And I did send you a text. Did you get that, Wakila? I just want to make sure you have my.
Okay, wait a minute.
All right.
You send it on the chat?
No, your personal cell phone.
Oh, okay.
I sent
right.
you some things the other day, but I didn't know if you got it. That's all. I'm just checking
Okay.
up. All right, thanks.
All right, thank you. Mm-hmm.
All right. We appreciate all. Okay, Mrs. Executive Director, I am turning the call over to you. You are going to be the host. And it's turned over to you.
Okay, Herschel.
Recording's already on.
Okay, did we go live on Facebook now or what? I see you're not live on Facebook. I guess he left. So we'll do what we usually do. We usually go live on Facebook so people can see us on Facebook. And we usually get, it's not 8 o'clock yet, so let's give it a few minutes and then we'll start our opening hymn, Lift Every Voice and Sing.
And
Anybody want to make a statement or ask a question in the meantime? It just came in to you this evening. You wouldn't be looking at all your email. You would look at the one that just came in this evening.
I have another meeting coming up. I'm not sure how long I'll be able to stay on, but I will. I'm just expecting an important call that I have to take and jump on. Miss Kennedy.
I think she's muted.
She is. You sound good, Mary.
Yes, I am. Actually, tomorrow I'm going to give.
You always have such positive energy. I love it. I love it.
I try. Yeah.
Tomorrow, what you were starting to say?
Tomorrow, I'm going to give you a call. Remember, I've been saying I will reach out to you. I really want to find out more about FOMIA section and how we can be able to engage, especially youth.
I'm very interested, and absolutely. And youth is a big part of everything we work towards. And again, just a reminder on my Facebook, not my Facebook, on my website, there's a free reading series, and it has a bunch of free downloadable books for the kids. So, and there is one of them that has some, it's just basic, cartoon drawings and of the African people. There's Native America, there's Hispanic, so forth. But again, trying to engage the youth to be more involved in the beauty of reading and learning and so forth.
I was, the whole of this week, I was trying to go into the UNESCO camp youth engagements. And as I was trying to, just to see how creatively we can engage either the African community, young people and so on. And what I figured out, I was actually talking to a guy who is pretty much in charge of that. I said, we really have a low participation of people from Africa. And I figured out actually the camps are too expensive. I said, so how do we really engage? because following the curriculum and what they were teaching them, it's pretty much civic international structure. You know, those kind of things that would also civic, which would also like kind of engage communities both here and at home. So I had an idea that I saw this kind of credit that they are giving out for the kids, and I'm like, I wish we could be able to request that those credits should be given to such kind of to facilitate that kind of learning. You get what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, rather than just being, I don't know.
Well, we just have to keep at it, Mary.
Yeah.
And yeah, give me a call. I'm just curious. Will you be calling me on my cell phone, or do we need to do a Zoom chat, or what?
I can do your cell phone since it will be just one-on-one, and if you don't.
Because you're located where
in
right
Maryland,
now?
Maryland.
Where's that? Maryland? Okay. Sorry. Love that accent. But
yeah.
yes. Okay. All right. So yes, that'll be fine. And you know, Oklahoma time, like right now, it's 7 o'clock, or so Eastern, it's 8 o'clock. So Karen,
1 hour difference, like
Yeah,
an
so-
hour, pretty much. If it is by, I would, let me see.
so let's chat later, because Miss Kennedy needs the.
Yeah.
She'll slap
Okay,
me.
it's 8 o'clock now, and we will get started. We'll lift every voice and sing.
See, I told you.
We're going live on Facebook.
I see the apple statement. I see. Got it.
Lift every voice and sing till heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening stars. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
You won't let me.
Sing a song to the ring at the dawn that's has dawned. Sing
I found you sang the apple studio thing, right? I found that. Apple studio. I said you sang that, didn't you?
Yeah, what you find out?
facing the rising sun of a new day.
Yeah, I said you sang apple studio.
Let us march on till victory is won. God of our healing, God of our silence, who has brought us far in our days. Thou who hast by thy might Shadow beneath the light, may we
Uh-oh. Sorry.
recording in progress. True to our name, to live.
And what is our native land?
Africa.
Africa.
The days of needing to put 20% down.
What is our native land?
Africa.
Africa is the
Africa.
homeland of mankind, and it is our ancestral homeland. Welcome to the Africa Diaspora Directorate, where we meet daily to discuss the Black Folks Plan. Today, the focus is on public safety.
No. Today's Friday. Okay, yes.
Yeah. And the part of the plan that deals with that, policing and public safety. We'll get started with a message from our chairman, Dr. Kofi Ajapong.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Today being Friday is the justice. How do we get justice into our communities? Black and blue policing, police supervision of our community.
We can't hear you, Mr. Colby.
Mute mine, go ahead. I muted mine.
The police supervision of communities has been regretted for a long time. The idea being that the police officer may come from anywhere in the country, and he may not have any feeling whatsoever for the community. He's just doing a job. So when anything happens involving a community citizen and an officer from Los Angeles in Silver Spring here, it becomes a very difficult and tenuous relations because the police officer have no knowledge of the community. So it is very important that the community really get involved with the policing. We cannot leave this in here to the city hall and the city council people. That has been the status which we have inherited from these Europeans and their mayors and their city councilmen and so on and so forth for the administration of the people. It hasn't worked. And if it has, it is at the detriment of the African people. I reject that kind of posture. We need to have the community people involved with the policing of the community so that the any incident that happens within the community is understood by the people. This is not going to be easy because people, especially the white people, want to have their men and women infuriated and also involved with the policing of big cities inhabited by the African descendants. And it has become very tenuous. And especially when white policemen are in the Black community and they want to quell true and true, which is not doing anything wrong, but it's the way of life. Their way of life as young people is to hang around the community and to do things that they know best. But the police wants people to conform to every nature of the law. So you can see that the white community and the way they look at policing in communities, there's a bit different, because the attitude of the people in each county or city or section or ward is a bit different. This is where we are now as Americans. The blacks have a different attitude towards the youth and their reaction to things around them, and the whites have a different attitude. But the city council doesn't know what I'm telling you. Neither do the Congress or legislatures have, because none of them are raised in the black community. None. You get a councilman who lives in a suburb of DC, and the police officer in DC who come from anywhere in the country. It shouldn't be that way. You know, so I would recommend that the people have their own selection of police officers. As of now, it's an impossibility to do that. The people have no say in selecting the police officer in their neighborhood. So what do you do? How do you solve the problem? And this is where the crisis has left us. And if you go into a DC jail or PG County jail or Montgomery County jail, you see these young men, blacks, are there because they shouldn't be there. The officer who indicted them, who found them doing crimes or doing something stupid, are not from that community, so they don't know. All what they know is the law, but that's not enough. Law is for people to obey. People in their communities must have their own men and women. If it's police officers, this is a common sense, isn't it? Especially when the action of the police officer on the youth can end the youth to become a delinquent the rest of his life. You can see what I'm talking about. That's not what's happening. The officer may come from anywhere in the country and driving a car and hearing there's a crime going on in some section of DC or Maryland somewhere, drives his car there and confronts this boy and gets him apprehended. And instead of paying attention to the community norms, what is happening? Where are you from? Which house? I mean, who is your father? Who is your mother? They don't go into that. You know, this is where community policing is so urgent. I don't think we can make it. I don't think it will happen. I don't think the people in the country have the common sense to know that these youth, African youth, don't have to go by the norms of the country that this police officer is enforcing. But if there's a policing in the community, a person in the community may make this crime very, very small. And therefore the consequences of it like if a boy is coming from PG County, a police officer plant a cigarette of marijuana in the car and arrests the boy. See, the crime that police officer has committed this boy. He put a cigarette butt in his car. He said, "Look, I found this. You criminal. You selling this. You are selling it." The boy in apprehension couldn't even answer. What do we do? There needs to be a real study of this community, but the rich whites will not permit this. And the poor blacks have no knowledge of what I'm talking about. So all you know is go to DCJ, every young youth is in there. Go to PGJ, every youth is in there. And it's all go against Africans. Because each individual must be trained, must go to school, must learn, but you can't go to school while you're in jail. And they mistreat you and they give you all kinds of direction of criminality, so that by the time you get off from the jail, you are more than one criminal. Look at all these crimes that we have knowledge. So we need to take a look at this, at the community and the police, and the way the Europeans have brought this into our community. The other thing is that if I commit a crimes against another person, it shouldn't be the state to punish me. It should be the community. And whatever the community decides is what the boy, the criminal, should do. If I commit a crime against you and the state that is a criminal, the state defines that, then I have to come and work for you instead of being put in jail. Work for the as a criminal, or the person who sustained my the injury must be compensated. If I have to live with you for 2 years, yes, you work for me. These are some of the things that were going on before the state became a bit brutal on Africans. You may not see what I'm talking because your mind may not be there. But every crime is against a person. Well, the person who committed the crime and the person upon whom the crime was committed live in a community. If you put the person, the two of them, if you put the criminal in jail, nobody is benefiting. And the person upon whom the crime was committed will sustain the crime all his or her life. He will have the effect of the crime all his or her life. He doesn't get compensation, and then the state doesn't get anything. Rather, the state put the person who committed the criminal in jail. I mean, what are you trying to do? Are you joking? Well, some of my professors disagree because their minds are Europeanized. But if you look at it broadly, you see that building a prison house like the DC and putting 800 people in jail, in that jail, and feeding them and housing them and all kinds of things that are being done. If that expenditure on that criminal is even given to the person upon whom the crime was committed, it will have a more beneficial effect on the community than putting the person in jail. Putting the person in jail is actually a punishment that have no benefit to anybody. Anyway, Madam Executive Director, let me tell you this. The system, the way it is now, needs a very serious exposure. You know, just recently during the George Floyd case, they say defund the police, defund the police. Not really defund the police. Not really taking the money from the police, but rather the function of the police must be redefined. Maybe, but here you are, all the young men and women in DCJ are wasting their lives. Maybe they need to go to apprenticeship or some place where they can do some work. But these are English system, European system imposed on the African who has no knowledge what the European system is about. Because the African and the European in the 2021 live in one community, one city, and the action against the white man affects the black man. The action against the white man affects the black man. So you can see that we have to really to study this by the community to community, from area to area. You cannot sit in the city council or Congress and make a law. Nonsense. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kofi Ajapong. Hopefully, the communities will look at the Black Folks Plan on our Facebook and also on our webpage, AfricaDiaspora.org, and review the Black and Blue Policing Plan, which involves modification to the present system and include training for police as well as community policing, and reframing the practices so that the people who are involved with the policing would have a closer relationship with the people who live in the community and would begin the training as young teenagers and in a special academy that is developed by our program. And this will be a place where the new police officers will be drawn from the community and not from anywhere. And there's a lot more to it. And I suggest that those of you who have not seen it, please go to the AfricaDiaspora.org and look at the Black and Blue Policing Plan, or go to hashtag Black Folks Plan. That's easier to remember. At this point, we will have station identification, and you can give us your view on the topic of the day. Okay, we'll start with Mary. Good evening, Mary.
Good evening, Ms. Karen. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to, for me to be able to highlight on this. Policing in the community, as you put it, it can be changed, in my view, by involving majority of the communities that seem to be what you would consider at risk. Because sometimes when you have somebody out there who is part of your community, is going to change the narrative in a way, or change the perception, but also training the police. The aim is to protect and serve the community, or the not to harm. So coupled by training or mental health evaluation, in that those ones who are also not well won't be into that field, because majority of these fields, they are very stressful, but they also need empathy. You know, if you meet somebody who is not in that good shape that you think other normal citizen maybe, what is your heart there, and how is it going to be able to help you deal with the challenge that you are facing at that material time? So those are the few highlights I would comment on the topic itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Anybody else would like to, let's hear from Elder Prophet Cox. Could you please
Yes,
introduce
I'm sorry.
yourself and tell us what you think of the topic of the day?
Well, I was posting a few things, some thoughts. One of the things that I've learned over all these different processes is that um, there's been training for decades with the police department over diversity and inclusion and those kinds of things, and yet there had not been any change, and some would say it's worsened. So what the science is showing, I posted some videos. I have some more to post before we finish. I was a part of a group that did some conversations with judges and lawyers from a part of the country around systemic racism, that we actually live in a systemic racist system, which is like all of us being in an ocean. So the idea that we can get even the right people to not do what the system trains them to do kind of is not very effective, because some, even African American and other uh, um, people of indigenous background, also are trained in the system, and they also support it. There are groups who do not. I've heard Dr. Joy DeGruy had a policeman who started a particular group, and those who tried to fight against it had problems because the system was flawed from the making, like making a cake without butter or sugar or whatever the ingredients they call a cake, and then at the same time thinking that you can change it without rebaking it. So it's more than just the skin color or history, because we're all in the ocean and have been for centuries. And so what is being addressed by the author of the book that I posted, and also if you'll watch the video, it's 100 minutes. It's long, but I promise you, if you watch it and share it with young people, they'll really get that this is by design. There's nothing, and the idea that perhaps convincing populations of white police or Black who have been trained in the same system, that somehow this would change with education. It helps to understand that it's beyond that. I think it was Carter G. Woodson in Miseducation and Negro that said, if you teach someone to go to the back door, after a while, you don't have to even point to the back door. They will go look for it. And if there's not a back door, they'll cut one for themselves, because over time they learn that. So and I'm not a, expert on these matters. That's why I post some of those things. When the Emancipation, what is the 13th Amendment was signed, it clearly stated that slavery ended in the country except for those who were charged with a crime, which is why immediately those who had lost slaves as their workers began to come up with bogus charges immediately around, loitering or whatever's being out after dark or whatever, anything, because under the 13th Amendment, they could continue to do what they did during slavery. So history is a big part of it. And I think our communities knowing the history really well, I'm learning it as I go, as well as the other piece that's brought up in the book by Resma Manikin, that had been a piece I was looking for, is how can people do these things to other people? Is that the Europeans who really put the system together, they came out of 1,000-year history in their own country where they were brutalized during the Dark Ages. And so what they did is they brought that traumatized psyche across the globe, colonized it, and spread it like a COVID-19, or obviously worse. So some of these things are rooted beyond just teaching facts and information and hoping that people will be moral about it, because, I mean, it's kind of probably not good to say, but some of it is not there. It has to be, reprogram, and education, of course, helps with that, but it's beyond that. So just putting it out there, if you look at the documentary 13, and it is 100, but it is so compelling. The fact that even the problems with voting rights that we're fighting for, that the plan to prevent us to vote has been impeccable, for centuries. The it has been impeccable if you just follow. And I don't want to ramble about it because, like I said, I posted some videos. I post some more. Cash for kids. You know, the fact that the criminal justice system has so much for-profit in it that the same slavery system that they openly did can now be done through private for-profit prisons. And there have been companies that have sued states because they didn't have enough people in jail. So it's those, you know, so just watch, like I said, the videos. I was just horrified, but it was really cleared up a lot of things for me that it is systemic. We're all in the ocean. And so there's something we all have to do to get dry, really, not just them, but also us, because there are Black policemen that participate, that have watched things happen. Some felt powerless. Some, I've talked to policemen who said that you have to do what we say, because if you don't, we're taught to kill. And so they don't apologize for it. But if you watch the videos, I just put that out there for, so that, and then you can go from there to do your own research. I have a few more to post, but these were some that we showed to judges, magistrates, and lawyers. And we had what I do, I'm a part of the 400 Years of African American History Commission, but on a community level, what I do is healing circles with community Association of Black Psychologists, Community Healing Network, and other groups around, helping us to heal our psyche, because we also participate in some of these things. But then what they have not talked about is the fact that the people who spread this traumatic stuff to everybody's DNA, that they came out of 1,000 years. There's nothing that they did to us that they hadn't done to each other for 1,000 years. So they don't know that in our conversations. As I talk to white people I know, and I said, what about your trauma? Even those who say that they're in it to help us, I said, okay, it's good you're helping us, but what about your trauma? And they'll say, our trauma? You're the ones that had trauma? No, because trauma produces trauma. So the trauma we experienced came from those who brought the trauma. So they don't know that about themselves. They don't know that about their history. So for them to change it. And then the other piece, and then I'll shut up, but because I'm gonna post some more so that you can watch that for yourself, because these other people did the research. They've looked at our DNA and found that we've been affected by the trauma of our ancestors who never could even speak out about it because they didn't have and it actually, the way the DNA works is that the body wants to survive, so it makes adjustments within it, but they've had the same thing. So anyway, there's a book, there's some videos, and just know, yeah, we've been telling them what happened to us, but it's really beyond that, because one, they've had so much of it, they don't even know the difference. And two, like Australia was a prison, colony, and they turned into the leaders of it. The people they brought to this country to start this country, they didn't bring kings and counts and that. They brought the people who were in prison and homeless and all that. They wanted rights, they wanted land, they wanted what they didn't have in Europe, so they came here to get it after 1,000 years of being brutalized. So they are who they are. There's some things they need to do, and just telling them that we want them to stop is not going to do it. So that's my thought about it.
Right, you're absolutely right, and I really thank you for sharing that. I'm learning more and more about our history, not only Black people history, but white people history, European history, African history, Australian history, Canada history, and I'm horrified. The more I learn, the more horrified I become. And I'm saying, we are a miracle. We have survived the most horrendous, horrid conditions that's ever been placed on any people, and still we rise. And so I'm just thankful for every woke person I hear speaking who's aware of what's going on and what has happened in the past, because the only way we can assure that it doesn't continue is to be aware of what has happened. And if we don't know, to go look for it, because the information is out there and they're not volunteering it in the schools. And the systems that are in place right now are doing everything they can to keep kids from being taught our true history in the schools. So we're going to have to find a way to teach our kids ourselves in the community. And I'm just telling you the way I feel about it. And as far as policing is concerned, you're absolutely right. They have been trained to do what they do, which is kill Black people. It was part of the original plan. And for those who are not killed, it was part of the plan to put them in prison so that they could continue to be slaves for the system. And I really, really thank you. Are you a psychologist?
No, I'm actually, I've spent 30 years as a mental health nurse, a little bit more, but I am a part of the Association of Black Psychologists because they let you do that if you have a license. And I've trained in a lot of the healing circles. Can I read something to everybody really quick to let you know how I posted the videos that I've learned. I'm just sharing what I recently learned. But this is something else that I've learned is that it goes beyond, as we know, 16, 19 and all that. But here's something that goes back to the 1400s, and this was another powerful piece. And this was one of the popes, and back during that time, the Pope was ruler of church, states, and everything. So here's the papal bull. This is the law that they put out there for every European country and beyond. It says, we grant you by these present documents with our apostolic authority, full and free permission to invade, search out, capture, and subjugate the Saracos, whatever these are, and pagans, which included all of us and Native Americans, and any other unbelievers and enemies of Christ, wherever they may be, as well as their kingdoms, counties, principalities, and other property. Listen to this, and to reduce their persons into perpetual servitude. Now that was in the 1400s, so they intended for us to be
Absolutely.
ever. What you said, we are a miracle. The fact that they're killing us in the streets and all that, that's a piece of it, but they never intended. I think once we get that as a people, they never intended for us to be anything but servants. From that papal bull in 52. And during that time, they saw us as infidels. And so they were given permission to enter Africa and take everything by the power of invested in them by God.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they still believe that.
Absolutely.
All those white racists and all those QAnon and Proud Boys and the people who stormed the Capitol, they were holding the Bible, the cross. They believe in Jesus Christ, and they did all that stuff in the name of Jesus Christ.
And they were given the authority to by they may not be Catholic, but again, the Catholic Church led the whole Christian deal, way back when with the councils and stuff when they first put all that together. And I'm Christian. I'm just saying though that they, as men, as everyday people, but the Pope is God in the earth for many people, and the largest landowners on the planet, the second largest is the Vatican, the first is the Crown in England. But again, we don't go back to history. They said those who forget the history are doomed to repeat it. We have forgotten where some of this stuff come from. They don't tell us, they don't even know themselves that they really are riding on a papal bull that was put out long ago, because they wanted to go through Africa and get the gold and diamonds and ivory and all that. But they said, subdue the infidels. I didn't realize too recently that it actually said for perpetuity, perpetual slavery or servitude. So they never intended. And the 13th Amendment, watch 13 if you don't watch anything else on those videos. It gives you the history of it and how every single president that has been in office has worked. We focus on one or two we don't like, but every one of them worked to support some of these agendas.
Of course, they support each other for sure. I want to thank you so much for sharing that, because you are right on point. And I really appreciate people when they are awake and telling the truth. So thank you so much, sister. So let's move on. Let's hear from D. Polk. Could you share with us your view about the subject matter of the day, Black and Blue policing policies as they're implemented in this country?
Hi, thank you very much, Carol. I don't have anything really major to say, but what I will say is I enjoyed the conversation. definitely glad to know that this organization is involved in communities and trying to at least make sure that the stories are told and that there are solutions and implementations as it relates to police reform, etc. It's definitely true, and I'm glad to hear someone talking about the history or the historical points relative to what we see and hear every day and where it really comes from. And that just like slavery and lineage there, this is also lineage as it relates to how white folks were many, many years ago against their own as well as others. So, and what I'd like to see or hear when there's folks being interviewed on CNN and all these other stations, it would be great for people to say more of what I heard today, and let folks really understand. And another important point that was made is oftentimes these people don't know themselves and don't understand why they are like they are. In fact, there's a study that white folks are doing to try to understand why they are like they are, basically the devil. So if more and more information was said or stated when there's an opportunity, I think it would be great for more and more people to hear. And then certainly for us not to get necessarily caught up in that, where we extend the time to do something about it. So we understand there's a problem. We need to implement those changes, and at the same time understand where they came from, and eradicate it. Not just obviously put a Band-Aid on it.
Right.
This stuff has to be snuffed out. So again, I appreciate this organization and what you all are doing, and certainly keep up the good work. But use your influence to make sure these folks are implementing real solutions that's going to be permanent, because otherwise it can easily turn back. You can see even today, if that idiot was to get back in the White House, you can pretty much figure out what would happen. So we've got to certainly, again, use our influence and demand that folks that we put in office do the right thing. Black political folks as well. We got to hold them accountable. When they don't do what they're supposed to do, we need to vote them out and vote in the people who do what we need. So,
Right.
So again, thanks a lot. Thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for being persistent, keeping this organization going. You have a lot of bright people, a lot of folks who are in positions to pool together, and make something happen that's going to be permanent. So that's what I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you get the point of where we're going, that's for sure. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Indeed.
Okay, any questions of the people who have spoken so far, or comments? So I see Samuel Baldwin has come in. Samuel, may we hear from you on the topic of today, which is Black and Blue policing, and our plan for Black folks with regard to policing and reform and making sure that the present system is changed in a way that's going to be more productive for our people. May we hear from you, Samuel?
I'm sorry. Hi.
Hi, Samuel.
This is Mr. Baldwin. I don't have anything to add. I don't have anything to add. I was I guess I got caught off a little because I was out and about running errands and stuff, and I just got on about 5 or 10 minutes ago. And
where is Bernice?
Oh, she must have had some kind of network problems.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not. We were the last 2 weeks we were down there visiting, but now I'm back in Kansas City, so we're in a different location. We'll have to check on her and see. I know that she registered yesterday for today, but maybe she forgot to.
Yeah, I sent her the email again to remind her to register so she could get on this line.
We'll check on her.
We'll check on it and make sure that we're on it tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you.
I always miss her.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any comment or question before we close out? Let's see, I think every caller, yeah, caller, would you like to make a statement? And how's your father doing? Miss Adams, are you there? I don't know what's going on with that. Okay. So if there's no more comments and no more questions, then I guess we'll close out for the evening and start back tomorrow at 7 o'clock, the same line. And we'll stay on for the 8 o'clock, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, who would like to volunteer to say the closing prayer? Volunteers. Elva Cox, would you like to say the closing prayer for us?
Okay, let's do that.
Thank you.
God of our hearts, God of our understanding, God of our realization, we come before you giving thanks for your blessings of this fellowship and for these organizations that are doing such wonderful, marvelous work. The time is now. We give thanks for that. We give thanks as we believe that you are bringing forth this check, the check that we're calling it the CTC. The CTC, that's how I remembered it. What does it stand for? Cut the check, the CTC.
Oh,
So we're putting
cut the
that out
check.
in the atmosphere, not just for vain glory, but to be able to do work within our communities across the globe to heal, restore, renew, redeem the time that has been lost, the genius that was gone without being recognized. We just thank you as you pour forth and allow divine host of heaven, the divine host of angelic hosts, the divine ancestors, those who have gone on who thought that it was all forgotten and all no hope for. We thank you that now there is this open window and door, and there are people who are bringing their talents, their gift, and their genius to the table to work together harmoniously to bring it forth. And we know that your power is with us as we go forth to do this. And we give thanks for each and every one that takes the time to do this. We pray for your healing power to flow through our communities, to touch our bodies, minds, and spirits. Some of our elders have worked so hard and so long, they're just holding on to be able to continue to bring their genius to the table. Sustain them, strengthen them, every organ, every tissue of their bodies. Give us the opportunity to bring this forth within a generation, not 9 or 10, but this generation can see this come forth. We thank you for this in the powerful name of that which is good and righteous. And for my belief, I say in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right.
Thank you so much. The meeting is now adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.